Awesome. I'll hit record on this guy. Let's see. All right, I think we are live. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamone, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self-acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Uh, Listeners, today I want to let you guys know I am very honored to have one of my guests come back for episode 2. I have with us today Scott Stewart. He grew up in a home that was less than supportive and was filled with manipulation and a poor role model for a father. He spent time working on personal development for over a decade to overcome the rough years of his early childhood and life. He's broken the generation cycle of abuse that he was subjected to, and he's become a professional speaker outside of his day job, and he helps other people overcome adversity and learn how to harness the power of forgiveness. His belief is that anything is forgivable if you hold the right belief and what that forgiveness is and who it's for. Sean or Scott, I want to welcome you back to the show.
Well, I don't know who Sean is, buddy, but I'm glad to be back, man.
Well, and for our listeners, Scott did an episode with me not too long ago, probably about a month or so ago, and it was a very, very impactful episode. I want you guys to go back and listen to part 1 of this series because Scott has a very powerful story, and I'm going to let him share that. I'm not going to ruin that, but he has a very good way of talking about forgiveness and what that actually is. And the reason we're doing a second episode today is because Scott has 6 guiding principles for forgiveness, and I wanted to give him some space to actually go through those because we ran out of time on the last episode. So without further ado, I'm going to let Scott jump in and start off with the first level here of forgiveness, and just follow us with today's episode.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, pal. I'm just going to take just 1 or 2 minutes real quick and do a highlight because I would encourage also the people that are listening. You do want to go listen to the first recording we did, just simply to get some context of the things that I'm going to share, and some of the things we'll address today. But the really really short quick story is that I grew up in a very abusive home. I was adopted, and my father had extreme anger issues, and that presented tremendous challenges and struggles, from self-esteem to anger, those kinds of things. And when I was just 22 years old, my father, in an act of, I'm going to call it rage. I'm not sure what else to call it, but in an act of rage, in the summer of 1991, he took my mom's life. And the the implications from that were obviously forever life changing, because I was the last one to see my mom alive. And you know, an event like that, if you're not, if you don't become intentional, um, and on purpose, I think maybe those are the two best words for that. It From something like that, it'll destroy you. It'll ruin you. You'll lose your trust in other people. You'll carry around the baggage, the trauma, from things like that. And so, um, you know, I don't know that there was anything special about me, other than I did become very intentional about working through that trauma, to kind of unpack all of that baggage, if you will, because I didn't want it to screw up the rest of my life. So there's maybe the 2 or 3 minute piece of where did I come from and why am I qualified to talk on forgiveness? Well, and just as Chris said, I absolutely 100% believe anything is forgivable if if you hold the right belief about what forgiveness is and who it's for. Now, that sounds simple, but there's some depth to that, and I understand that because I was able to forgive my father for murder. And although that may not be the most horrible thing you've ever heard of somebody going through, it's pretty intense. And so coming through something like that and coming out the other side of it healed, I guess, if you will, and able to forgive and able to let go and to be able to talk about the man, and not get angry, not get mad, even though he took my mom's life, I think, um, gives me a little bit of credibility to speak on the subject, humbly. So, yeah, and back to what Chris had mentioned, I've identified, there's really seven, but we're going to talk about six. But there are six key pieces or key elements, if you will, around the topic of forgiveness that I have found that a lot of the time we hit one to three of those categories, and it causes us to get stuck, because we've all heard people, we've all known people who have they went through something traumatic, life changing, life altering, and they're never able to get on the other side of that, and not just healing from it, but to that also includes to be able to forgive it and let go of it. And so I'm going to share those six things. We're just going to jump right into it real quick. um, the first one that I'd like to make note of is, and Chris, please, you jump in anytime. You feel free to interrupt me if you've got a question or whatever. You've
Scott,
got my permission.
I was going to lead off that before we jump into those, but something that I wanted to share about
Yeah.
forgiveness, because I have struggled with this myself, and I'm sharing this for listeners because I'm in no way, shape, or form an expert on forgiveness. I will say that it's been something I've had to learn personally how to work through and how to achieve that. I'm still going through that, by the way, but I think we're building off of what Scott was talking about. Forgiveness is something that we always look externally for. And you guys are going to hear Scott talk about forgiveness in a very different direction than what we've commonly heard in our world. And I know that the other half of it too, forgiveness has become somewhat of a washed out phrase in our society. We use it so loosely. And so, to cover something up, to move on, to skirt over an issue, to just brush something off, we use it in the wrong context is where I'm going with that in a lot of ways. And that's what I've learned on my journey of things. And it's why I'm excited for you guys to hear Scott share his seven principles of forgiveness today, because those are things that I have struggled personally to understand. After Scott's first episode, by the way, I had a much better understanding of forgiveness, and it really helped me see and shape that for myself personally. But what I'm excited about today is that we are going to talk about these principles of forgiveness, but we're also going to look at how people see them, because you do get stuck with that word forgiveness because somebody will do you wrong or you've done somebody wrong in your life. And oftentimes you may be the one forgiving somebody, by the way, but you might not get it back. And it might put you in that place of feeling like, well, why am I forgiving other people if I'm not being forgiven for things I do? And so there's a lot of these ideologies rolling around in society of what forgiveness is. So Scott, I'm very
Yeah.
excited too. I'm going to stop my rambling, but we're going to jump into it. So,
Yeah, you bet. No problem. So I think the number one thing is we'll just jump right in, Chris. The number one thing that I sometimes hear people struggle with is they say something horrible has happened, and they have the context, or they, and I get where they come from when they say this. There's no judgment here, but I've heard people say is, well, I could never forgive them for what they did. Right? We've all heard that. I could never forgive them for what they did. And the underlying context of that is, it says, wait a minute, hold on. The forgiveness, if that's true, if someone says that, and that's true, they think that the forgiveness is for the other person. It's that
correct.
they're taking it off of themselves, Chris, and they're putting it on the other person, to say, I could never forgive them for what they did. And the underlying context is, well, do you think forgiveness is for them? See, that's where that's one of the areas sometimes where we get a little hung up, right? Is we think that somehow by if we forgive that person, we are um it's about them. And the the reality is that's not accurate. The forgiveness piece is not about them. The forgiveness piece is about us. And it's a releasing of the anger for ourselves. It's not for the other person. It's not for the other person. Now, as we go through some of these, I understand there's going to be some people listening, and I'm not going to be sorry, but I understand I'm going to challenge some people's beliefs. I, I get
That's
that.
okay.
And it is okay. It is okay. And you can disagree with me. You can disagree with me all day long. But I've come through this being able to literally forgive murder and go on and have peace in my life because of these things, because of these steps.
Well,
So in the case with my father, I think one could even warrant and say what he did is unforgivable. I could never forgive him for taking my mom's life. And I think a lot of people could probably relate to that. They would probably go, "Yeah, yeah, that's murder. I can't believe he would do that. That's horrible." And I I get where we're coming from, but the forgiveness is not it's not for the other person. It's just not. It's not. If you think it is, then you're giving up some of your control and you're placing it in the other person's lap. Okay?
absolutely. You're correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I think what's hard about
The,
that is that we're all trained to blame other people in our lives a lot. It's very hard for us to turn around at ourselves and say, what was my contribution to
yeah.
this? Or did I one of the things I learned in my own life with certain situations is that when I turned that thing back at me and said, what was my participation in this situation? What did I tolerate and allow? And man, I will tell you, and listeners, I hope you hear this one too, by the way. I had to eat crow when I answered that question because I I really had to sit there and say, you saw the writing on the wall, but you tolerated and allowed it. So yes,
Yeah.
it's fair to blame. Tony Robbins says blame fairly a lot. And I feel like
Mm,
forgiveness comes down this road a lot. If you're gonna, pardon my French, but I'm gonna say it 'cause that's how Tony Robbins does. If you're gonna blame people for all the shit they do, you better blame them for all the good they do too. And what he's saying is, I'm not asking you not to blame people. I'm asking you to blame fairly. And I think
yeah.
that's where forgiveness really comes in.
Yeah. Holy smokes, you brought the fire, buddy. Wow, I love it. I haven't heard I it's been a while since I've heard Tony Robbins say that, but I have heard that, and boy, isn't that true? And we don't. We generally don't blame fairly, do we?
We oftentimes don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
guilty of that. I'm sure most people are
Yeah.
too. I'm
Yeah.
not any different.
No. No.
So,
Well, and the next one that comes right in behind this, right? If forgiveness is for us, it's not for them, then one that kind of piggybacks on this is that people automatically think, well, then if it's not about them and it's about me, then they're getting a free pass for what they've done.
mm,
And I would say no. No. Who whoever said that they're getting a free pass? See, you can forgive somebody so that I or you so that we can have the peace so that we can let go of it and not give them a free pass. We're not going to excuse their bad behavior. They're not going to get away with it, right? And there's a lot of different directions we can go with this, but some people call it karma, and some people refer to it as God, that the just will come back around, or justice will prevail. And but you and I, you don't have to give anybody a free pass. You absolutely do not. What they did is what they did, and that's on them. And in the case of my father, um, you you really think I'm going to give him a free pass for what he did? I mean, come on. Let, let's be serious, right? And other people, Chris, other people, you know, I can think of some really horrible things, and I want to tread lightly here because we're dancing on feelings and emotions and horrible memories of, you know, for people that are listening to this. But I think of some things that just very, very evil, horrible things. And forgiving that person doesn't excuse their actions, not 1 ounce, not one
You-
ounce. Because what can we do? What can we do? Well, we can immediately say, which I'm going to um, uh, drop into the next one. I'm just going to jump right in here onto the
you
third one that piggybacks on this, is that we think, okay, so wait a minute. So where do we go from there? Where do we go? Okay, so I'm not giving them a free pass, right? And here's the third one. Forgiveness doesn't equal trust.
that is well said.
Forgiveness, forgiveness and trust do not wear the same clothes. They don't look the same. The same the two elements that equal those things, they're not even in the same box, right? And here's what I mean by that. I can choose, or you can choose, we can choose to forgive somebody, and that's our choice. I get that choice. Whether I want to or whether I don't, that's my choice. But if I'm going to trust somebody, boy, you got to earn that.
Hmm.
They have to earn that. And how do they earn that? They earn that by their actions, right?
Correct.
They earn that, and I'll go as far as to say their actions align with their words. That's how we build trust. Right?
Scott,
It's one of the ways. I mean, there's
you're reminding me of our first podcast. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you
yeah,
were reminding me of something you said while we were talking about this aspect of forgiveness. And
yeah,
uh, you brought up at a certain point in that podcast where you said, I could see my father in jail, but I don't really want to. I don't need to. And what you drove in my head when you were talking was the idea of boundaries with people. And
yeah,
this thing I saw online, I don't remember where it was. I wish I could find the quote, but it basically said, I can forgive you for what you've done, but that does not mean that you get access to me. And I thought that was a very, very powerful statement.
yep,
Because in my own forgiveness journey, I got asked about, would you ever have your in-laws back in your life? And I'll be honest for audience here, when you get triggered by something, and when I got asked that question, my first answer was, hell no, I wouldn't. That was
mm,
my first reaction, but then I thought about it and said, what's causing me to feel that way right now? And it was the fact of what Scott just said. When actions and words don't line up, there's no
mm,
trust there. And so
yep,
I'm able to forgive them. I feel like I'm getting there, by the way. I can forgive them for what happened. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you get access to me. And that's just how it is. And if you
huh,
demonstrate by your actions and your words that there's healing that can take place there and there's a place to build that trust, just like Scott said, it's earned through actions and words. That leads us to a different place in this journey. But it's very important, and I'll share because Scott talked about this on the first episode, boundaries with people. Just because you forgive somebody does not mean they get access to you.
that's right, that's right. And not a trick question, Chris, but who decides who has access to you? Who decides that?
Only you.
Only
Only you.
you. Only
There's
you.
nobody else around here, as you guys see in the Zoom video. There's nobody back here in the room.
You
It's just
you get,
it's just you
yeah,
guys.
you get to decide. And if you, what you don't want to do is give that power or give that choice to someone else. No, 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 no. That's your choice. If someone has hurt you really bad, you have a choice of whether you want to be around them or not. You have a choice whether you want to talk to them or not. You have a choice of whether or not you're going to take their phone call, return their text message, whatever it is. The list goes on and on. So trust and access are not the same as forgiveness. Those are two different things, right?
And
I
and
as I told you, yeah, as I told you before we started recording, with my father, I had made up the decision that if, and that was the key word, if I was going to see him again, if I would run into him on the street, if I would run into him in the grocery store, I had already made up my mind what that was going to look like. What was that encounter? Because we weren't going to stop and say, "Hey, it's been a while. How you doing?" Right? I mean, that wasn't how that was going to go down.
no.
you know, and so the person who's listening to this right now, you have that choice, and you get to set that boundary. You don't need anybody's permission at all, whatsoever. That is your call all day long, and don't give that up. That is your power. Don't give it up.
Well, Scott, I'm really glad you brought that up because another example of this that I do want to share with listeners today, because this has happened to so many people that I've talked to. So I know it's happened to people who are going to listen to this episode is you're going to have those people, by the way, whether it's family or friends. And I'm going to give the example of one of my in-laws or two of them, actually what they did. I had two in-laws reach out to me outside of the direct conflict I was having with certain people that said, well, you just need to forgive them. Everybody says things. You just need to forgive them. We're a family. We just need to do this. And I remember getting so infuriated and angry when I was in that moment because what I didn't understand, by the way, and this is what my anger was trying to tell me was if that person is continuing to force you to try to forgive or forcing you and telling you, well, this
Mhm.
you just need to do this because this bigger thing over here that's important to them. What's really going on there when somebody's trying to force you to forgive them, they're leading with their own selfish intentions. And what happens is, by the way, is if you fall for that and you fall into it and say, okay, fine, I'll forgive them, I'll go back. What you are doing, by the way, is sacrificing your needs. You are actually not listening to yourself. And if you think you're angry in that moment, I will tell you the funny story because I was down this path myself. You'll go back into that situation saying, okay, I forgive them. And whether it's a day, a week, a month, 6 months, whatever it is, that same person that told you to forgive them will repeat the offense. And you'll be even more angry, by the way. And that anger
Yeah,
is the part of you that loves you the most. I don't talk about anger traditionally like society says. Anger is actually that thing in you, by the way, that's a warning sign. It's actually like going like this on the side of your head saying, hey,
right.
you're not getting a need met right now. You're sacrificing a need that's very important to you. You don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, you don't feel understood. And so when somebody's
Yeah,
forcing you to forgive them, be very careful who you're doing that with. I want you, as listeners, I want you guys to think about yourself and forget other people for a second and just say, is this a person that's safe or unsafe? Is this somebody that I'm capable of having this conversation with where my needs are going to get met? Or is this going to be a scapegoat situation where I'm going to sacrifice myself and go right back in that situation again, where I'm going to get upset about something and I'm going to get told, well, just forgive them? Because this goes back to what Tony Robbins talks about, by the way, blaming them for all the bad and blaming for all the good. You can blame effectively in that moment with yourself, by the way, and say, if I forgive them because they want me to and I feel pressure to, I cannot get mad at them, by the way, if for anything else that happens going forward, I cannot get mad at them because I made the choice to put myself back in there to tolerate and allow that behavior. So you got
yeah,
to blame yourself effectively with that and say, no, I'm not okay with that. I don't need to forgive you. I don't have to. There's no gun to my head. I don't have to. And
that's right.
you might end up with a broken relationship. You might end up with some distance with that one. I'll tell you guys that up front.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but I want you to know that that directly has nothing to do with you. If your needs are not being met and you continue to go back, you're continuing to go back for abuse. And that's where forgiveness gets misused and abused, as I like to say.
yeah,
And that's why this podcast episode we're doing is so important, is shedding light on what this really means.
yeah. That brother, that's fantastic. You're right. Two two small pieces, and I'm speaking from experience when I say this. If you give up your, in this case, Chris, that you're talking about with it. Well, you just need to forgive them for the greater good, and come back to the family, and let that water go under the bridge, right? If you have I'm going to call it a conviction, or if you have a belief inside that says, well, wait a minute, hold on. No, no, you need to stand on this. This is wrong, and you freaking don't have to put up with it. Don't ignore that. Do not ignore that. And here's why. And I'm telling you from someone who did this. If you ignore that over and over and over again over a period of time, you are giving away little pieces of your self-esteem and your self-worth. You're giving them over to somebody else. And if you do that enough, you you it'll affect your self-esteem. It'll affect your value of what you feel you're worth, because you're giving it away. You're not honoring something that is speaking to your heart. So that's the first one. Um, the second one is it's okay to stir up the waters a little bit if someone who's hurt you, and to set a boundary, and maybe that's the family, right? Maybe that's your neighbor, that's your sibling. It's really is okay to set a boundary and go, You know what? Nah, I'm at least right now, I'm not going to be around them. I'm not going to tolerate that. And don't let and people will try to guilt you. They might try to make you feel bad. And that's okay, because as you said, Chris, that's on them. That's not
Mhm.
you. You're not doing anything wrong. You're standing on principle. So again, it that there may be, when you set a boundary in place and you hold to it, there may be a little rough waters that come from that, but that doesn't mean you still shouldn't do it, right? So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's no, that's beautifully said, and it's something to go back to where we started this podcast today as well. I know that a lot of people, I personally have done this, and I know a lot of people out there do it. When that forgiveness thing comes up, there's this sense of I want retribution because I've been wronged, and
yeah,
what I will share about that too, by the way, and I'll share some personal details as it's
yeah,
fitting today.
yeah,
Um, and when I was going through that drama with my in-laws during a really rough time, and I was watching my wife get verbally abused by her family, it was very hard for me to understand. And I wanted retribution. I wanted some kind of suffering to happen on that side of the fence because it was so unjust and unfair how my wife and I were treated on top of losing our child. That was a very hard place. What I came to terms with, and how I let go of my anger was the fact that family was so important to them and they were scared to have a broken family. But what they were not willing to do was to listen to our needs and meet in the middle and create an environment that was conducive of having a family and being together. The consequence for them is that they have a broken family now. They don't get to see my wife and my son, me, and we don't have a family anymore with them. That's the consequence that came. Now, I don't feel bad about that at all, ever, and I never have because I always led with that. I want to work things out, I want to fix things. But where it came down to is when you try to walk that line of forgiveness with people like that, and you're never going to get your needs met, what Scott just said about you're chipping away at your self-esteem, you're chipping away at your self-value every time you break that. I've been in that boat and I can tell you right now it is painful because they might have a broken family right now, and that's fine. I don't care. What is
yeah,
worse, by the way, is when you are in that place where you lost your self-esteem because you valued it on people that are not reliable and trustworthy. It's hard to pick yourself up. It's hard to say, who am I now? Who's Chris? Who's Scott? Who's the listener, by the way, listening to this episode? Who are you? And when you have to go from a broken situation like that, even when forgiveness gets misused, it's hard to figure out who the heck you are. And that can take many people, that can take years, even decades to re-figure out who you are, get your self of sense
mm,
identity back. And that's very traumatic for a lot of
yeah,
people. And that's why I don't take
yeah,
forgiveness lightly anymore because I've realized the damage that comes out of that for people. And
yeah,
so it's a big reminder to not, like Scott said, if that need is like barking really loud and it's pulling on you like a dog
mm,
chain,
right,
listen to that thing. Don't ignore it.
Yeah, yeah. It's there for a reason. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings me, Chris, to my next one. You kind of opened the door for me. That was perfect. But and that is this. Y- You have to want to forgive to
Mhm.
for all of this to be released. You have to want to let go of this. And in my own walk, I went through a time where I was very angry. I was very pissed. In fact, if my dad wasn't in jail, um, I I I had thoughts and I had images in my mind of how can I really make him suffer? He took my mom from me. How can I? But he was in jail, and that really didn't have that option. But my point in that is not my thoughts towards my dad. It is that I think that's pretty human for a lot of us to want retribution. We want that person who wronged us to pay. We want them to hurt like they hurt us, and I think that's very normal. Here's the key piece: it's okay to feel that. That's not a bad feeling. I think that's what makes us human. But you can't stay there. You can't stay there year after year after year. You can't stay there, because if you are having thoughts and planning and schemes of retribution to you're going to make this wrong right. I don't know that it's possible to forgive if you're entertaining the idea of how to make, how to even up the score, right? So in my own situation, and I'd love to hear if you have any input on this, Chris, from your standpoint. But I knew when all of this happened to me, I was 22, and I was young enough and just getting started in life. I just knew that I knew that I knew, and I call it a God thing, call it a spirit thing, call it a conviction thing. I'm not sure what to say, but I knew that if I didn't let go of this, if I didn't deal with this, if I didn't process it and heal from it, this whole crazy event was going to screw up the rest of my life. I just knew that it would. And it was enough for me to go, hang on, wait a minute. I don't I don't want to marry a woman and and destroy her life. Um, I don't want to bring kids into this world and raise them the same way my dad raised me. That was not an option. Like, so I just knew that I had to let go of this. I had to heal from it. That doesn't mean I ignored it. I hope people are hearing what I'm saying. I didn't ignore it. I didn't bury it. You can heal what you can feel. So I had to feel all
Mm.
of those things: the anger, the betrayal, the sadness, the grieving, all of those things. So at some point, and I'm not here to cast a judge to say when is that time. I'm just here to say at some point you have to go, okay, I've felt these things, and I want to let go of this. I want to get this behind me, right? And I had reached that place. So go ahead if you've got something there to add to that,
Uh,
buddy.
Scott, I'm really glad you said what you just did because I'll share another very personal moment of mine that I don't share too often. Back in my home in New Hampshire, I lived in the woods. I was on the outskirts of the city. We didn't have city lights or nothing out there, and a cross fell in one of the trees across from my driveway, a literal cross. I got to send you the picture of that.
Yeah.
But long story short, about 2 months after I lost my son, I don't know what happened that day, but I was out cleaning up fall leaves. It was in the fall, and I was just angry that day. It was just boiling in me, festering, and I was sitting there really angry at my in-laws for how they treated us. They were still doing it after we lost our kid. And I was just really upset. And I don't know what possessed me, but I picked up a rock on my driveway and I threw it at the cross, and I wailed off at God for probably 25 minutes. I'm not kidding. I probably looked like a psychopath sitting on my driveway, cussing and screaming and really upset. And anyway, at the end of those 25 minutes, I broke down and cried. I literally went from angry to sad in point two of a second. And I was having a full out conversation with God. And I literally told him, I said, I don't know how you can allow this to happen. I don't even get it. I said, I've been treated so poorly by what should be family. I've had to watch my wife get verbally and emotionally abused. I lost my kid on top of that. I lost my job 3 months before that. My whole life just got obliterated. And I let God know about it. And I said, I don't get why you let people get away with this. I don't understand it. And I just said, it's driving me crazy. Um, and that was a moment, by the way, that I told God at some point through that crying when I got done with that, I was looked like a hot mess. And I told him, I said, I'm giving up control now. I'm giving it up. I said, I hear your message you're trying to tell me right now. I'm giving it up. I no longer want retribution. I no longer want cause suffering to other people. I don't want to even, I just said, I don't want to deal with it anymore. I said, I just want to be left alone. I just want to be happy. I just want to go live my life. I don't want to live in this place anymore. I said, God, I'm tired of being angry. It's exhausting. It's emotionally draining. It's not getting me anywhere. It's not serving me anymore. Nothing good's coming out of this. And I told God that day, I said, I will listen to you where you take me, regardless of how dark that might get sometimes when I don't even understand it, when I don't even know why this is happening. I'm going to trust you and believe that you put me on the right path. And yeah, I don't know if my listeners, by the way, are spiritual or not. I don't know, but I am going to tell you guys, I've had a lot of things happen since that conversation with God that have unfolded in a very unconventional way. But God has put me on a path for certain things that I never saw coming before that conversation with Him. And so, I can share with you, I live my life very free now. I don't worry about other people. I don't even get angry with other people. I don't because it's not my problem anymore. I've also can share, by the way, that when I was having heated conversations with God, certain people started leaving my life. I don't even know how to describe it, but I would just not hear from people anymore, just drop off the face of the planet. And I would always wonder why or how, because I always told God, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I truly believe in a higher power, and that's just my experience. But I'll say that God kind of walked me in this course of forgiveness. He walked me in this place of letting go of anger. He walked me through it. I didn't do it by myself. And to Scott's point, when you sit in that retribution place, I can tell you right now, those things will ruin your life one way or the other. They will. I certainly lived it, and I can say I wish I didn't waste years doing that. But um, that's that's my story I can share for you.
Wow, buddy, talk about transparency. Holy smokes, what a life-changing event for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, man, God listens. I will tell you that. He does. It will not come in the conventional way like you're talking to a best friend, but he listens
Right.
and
Yes.
he shows you too. That's the worst part of it. It'll be a left turn out of nowhere. You're gonna go, okay, gotcha. I guess
Yeah.
we're going this way. So
Oh, this this
uh,
this brings me, this is a great, again, another just great, a great lead up to another one of these principles when we're talking about, you know, how do you forgive the unforgivable stuff, right? It This one was huge for me. This one was probably the out of all of these was probably the biggest one that took the most amount of effort and the most amount of work, and it's this. And I'll paraphrase it and then I'll share with you what it is. But forgiveness is not is not always a one-time thing. Sometimes forgiveness is an ongoing thing. Okay. And let me explain what that means. In and here's the best example that I have. Now, this is what I'm going to share with you, Chris, is you and your listeners. This is a conviction I have. It's not even a belief. It's a conviction. Okay. I'm not asking anybody else to buy into it. I I know what it's meant to me and what it's done for me. And if you find value in it, or at least it's thought provoking, hallelujah, that's fantastic. In the book of Matthew, chapter 18, 21 and 22, Peter is listening to Jesus talk, and he's teaching, and he's teaching to a crowd. Now, to give a little context, we don't know if the crowd is 15 people or 150 people. We don't really know the context, but he's teaching. Jesus stops talking, and it's kind of weird, but right out of left field, Peter asks him, he says, "Hey, how many times do you think we should forgive them?" And I'm sure, Peter, he said, "How about, should we forgive them seven?" And I'm sure that Peter probably thought, well, seven times, that's pretty righteous. Seven times. I mean, come on, how many times do we need to forgive somebody? And Jesus immediately turns around and he says, wait a minute, no. Not, how about seven times 70 or seven times 77, or, depending upon which translation you read, it lays it out, 70 times 70 or those sorts of things. I think what we can all agree on, aside from which translation to believe, is that it's a lot. The words in red told us, forgive them a lot. Here's what that meant to me. That conviction to me, Chris, meant this. Every time the anger started dwelling up inside of me, and I started thinking about my dad and what he did and how he changed my life and how he took my mom, I had to make a choice to go, nope, no, I forgive him.
Mm.
And the next Christmas would roll around, and my mom and dad weren't there. And I start to feel a little sad, and then start to feel a little mad. And I had to make a conscious choice to go, nope, nope, I'm not getting angry. I choose to forgive him. I choose to forgive him for what he did. And then at the day when I married my wife and my mom wasn't there, I start to feel those feelings again, right? Start to dwell up inside. Man, I wish my mom was here. Ah! And then I had to go, nope, nope. I choose to forgive him again. And then when my oldest daughter, my baby girl, Chris, such such a such an emotional moment. My baby girl, she comes delivered out of my wife, and the nurse holds this baby and says, "Hey, Dad, here you go." and I mean, seconds. She didn't take her off to the table and smack her butt or wipe her down. She goes, "Nope, here you go, Dad." I'm holding this baby, seconds old, and I'm just, oh, I get emotional almost thinking about it. And I'm holding her, looking in this little beautiful little angel's eyes, and I realize my mom can't be there to see her granddaughter. I get emotional just thinking about it. And I had to again say, no, nope, I'm gonna forgive him. And I have a list of dozens of stories just like that. That one more time, Chris, I had to forgive him again. It's not that he continued to re-hurt me, but those feelings, those thoughts would flare up just out of nowhere, sometimes out of nowhere. And I had a choice. I had a choice. I could choose to entertain those thoughts, get mad, let it screw up my day, let it screw up my afternoon, affect my attitude, or I could say, no, no, I forgive him. I'm not going to carry that. I forgive him. Chris, I probably, over the course of, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years, I probably forgave that man over 150 times of instances just like that. So when someone Well, back to what scripture says is 70 times 7 or 77 times 7, or how many times do we have to forgive somebody? We have to forgive somebody until they no longer have control over us. They no longer have control over our anger. I can think about my mom, that she's not here. She didn't get to see her granddaughters grow up, graduate, all of those things. And I can be emotional and sad about that. But because I gave my father, because I chose to forgive him over and over and over and over and over and over again, I don't get mad at it. I just don't. But I can still be sorrowful, right?
Yeah. Scott, that was really powerful what you just said, my friend. I actually was pulling up the verse on my Bible because I want to take a look at it later. But
Yeah,
the
yeah,
I love what you just described, by the way, because that's something that I'm currently working on myself, but you put that in such a good context that every time that we have, and we're going to have those moments when it comes to forgiveness, when someone's done
yeah,
us wrong. And I'm so glad you gave that example of getting married and mom's not there, having a child and mom's not there. And like you said, there's
yeah.
been many circumstances for you where mom wasn't there. And instead of letting
Right.
that anger and that rage take over kind of thing and rise, like I like to say it does,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
really put yourself in that place to just say, I forgive this today. I forgive this
yeah,
here. And that, I think forgiving that many times, I think really retrains or rewires you, so to speak, to lessen the emotional intensity behind it. And again, I think what I'm really trying to get at is it's giving that power back to you, because what I've
mm,
realized about my own forgiveness journey is every time we do hold on to that anger, every time we are wanting retribution, every time we think about that person that wronged us with a lot of that anger and frustration that comes along, that's very natural, by the way, we're giving up a little bit of
yeah,
our power. We're giving up a little bit of our control, our self convictions about who we are. We're giving up those things and giving them away when we really shouldn't be doing that. And I just think
right,
that's so
right.
powerful how you just described that.
Yeah. You- it's easy first. No, no, I wouldn't. I'm not gonna try and tell you that.
Uh,
No, but I, I had we got an internet glitch coming on a little bit.
yeah, a little. Okay, you're back. Can you repeat what
Okay,
you said
all right.
there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 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 was the process of choosing to forgive him over and over again, did that come natural? Did that come easy? Was that just like, oh yeah, no big deal? Hell no. No, no, I never said it was. Um, but you still have a choice. You still have a choice. Right now, there's somebody that's listening to this or watching the podcast, and there's somebody that right, we've heard that term, they're taking up rent free, or they're taking up space in their head free of charge,
Yeah.
right? And the okay, you have to start the process of forgiving them. And is that going to take a week? Is that going to take a month? Is that going to take a year? Heck, I don't know. I don't know. We're all on a different journey. um, but I know you have to start. you
Yeah.
you have to start, and you start just the very next, that anger that rises up or it flares up, and you just out loud. I had to do it out loud, Chris. It was out loud. I would say, no, stop, no, I'm not going to entertain that. I have chosen to forgive that. I let go of it. And you do that enough, and it will change. It will change. But you have to start. You have to start, and you have to become intentional about it. So,
Well, I think that's what's really hard for a lot of people, myself included. And what I share in my own coachings, I do deal with grief, people going through grief and loss. And the biggest thing I share with people is that anger piece, because I'm just my own upbringing and my life journey. Anger was a big part of it. And unfortunately, what I didn't know about my anger until losing my son was the following, that Anger was the part of me that loves me the most. It was screaming loud and it was angry loud because I was ignoring all my needs. I was not
Oh,
listening to myself. I was
yeah,
not taking a stand. And when I say that, not taking a stand, I don't mean that doesn't mean lashing out at people and forcing things. It doesn't mean
yeah,
that.
no,
Taking a stand means standing up for yourself and your beliefs. When you know something's not right, when you
yeah,
know you're around people that aren't kind to you or supportive of you or understand you, not listening to you, knowing that those people are just not your people, and that's okay.
right,
And
right,
so I try to encourage people, if you are listening to this podcast today, and anger, like Scott and I have talked about, anger is a big part of it. And there's going to be times you want retribution against somebody. We all want that. I mean, I'm not joking. A lot of us out there say, well, God, I really want this person to suffer.
yep,
We're all guilty of that. But I would encourage you guys, if you are struggling with forgiveness for whatever reason, when that anger comes up, listen to it, give it some space. And I don't mean go take it out on somebody, hit somebody. I don't mean that. What I do mean is grab a pen and a piece of paper and write down, I feel angry right now, and write down whatever comes out of this brain of yours. Write it all down. Because I can share with you guys, part of my forgiveness journey was sitting down one day and writing out. And I said, I forgive so and so. I wrote their name on the paper. And I'll tell you, I felt very heated writing that name down on that paper that day. That was not fun.
mm,
And
mm,
then I started sitting there forcing myself, kind of like Scott brought up when he said, nope, nope, not going to listen to that. Not going to listen to it.
right,
I started forcing myself, saying, hey, you got to face this anger. There's something not being seen, heard, or understood right now. And you need to
yeah,
get that thing out on paper. And when you start writing down why you feel the way you do, and writing down, I'm angry because of X, I'm sad because and anger, by the way, when you start writing, anger starts becoming other emotions. I'm just gonna let you guys know
yes,
that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it'll be in the form of I'm sad or I'm upset or I'm frustrated or I'm lost or I'm confused. I
not
don't know
being
what I
heard,
believe
yeah,
right there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when you write those things down, by the way, keep asking yourself those powerful questions. Why don't I feel heard? What's making me feel like I'm not heard?
right,
Write that stuff down, and you will find out, by the way, on this forgiveness exercise I'm talking about, you will find out, just like Scott taught us today on this episode of the podcast, that you can forgive people. You can forgive. And
mhm,
it's going to be a conscious effort, by the way, because the other thing that Scott mentioned today through his story, and I want you guys to pick up on this in no way, shape, or form means that you have to go tell that person face to face that you forgive them. This also
right,
does not mean that you're going to get over it today, right here, right now. This is not what that means. It's a process for
right,
you to work through. And
yeah,
I can guarantee when you get there, by the way, you're going to go, probably like me, who was screaming and cussing at God, down to God, I understand why this happened. I don't have to like it and agree to it, but I accept it for what it is. And I
right,
forgive this moment right now. And I'm taking my control back. I'm taking my personal power back. And
yep.
like Scott said a few minutes ago, you still have a choice. Even in that moment, you still have a choice. And you can make that choice to give yourself space to create forgiveness and to move your process forward. So,
Amen. Amen. Chris, I just realized there was one more that I didn't even give you in the notes, and I apologize. Boy, I feel like I failed. Holy cow.
well, let's
There's
fix
one
that
more.
today.
There's one more. There's one more. We'll go real quick because I
Let's
know
do it.
know we're
Let's
going
do
long.
it.
Here it is. Forgiving is not forgetting.
Mm,
You are not required to forget what happened in order to forgive. Let me give you an example. This was a very long time ago. I was just starting to go to church. Even I had never been in church in my life. I think it might have only been I don't know, the third time, the third time I ever went. And I'm sitting in the very back row. And wouldn't you know, Chris, the pastor, this is funny now. It was not funny at the time. Um, but the pastor, guess what he's talking on? Yep, he's talking on forgiveness. And I remember I'm sitting in the back row like this, you know, and I don't really hear a lot of what the pastor's saying, honestly, but I hear him. And I hear this lady like two rows ahead of me, who at the time I really didn't know. And she said, here's what she said. And she kind of mumbled it. She didn't really say it out loud, but she kind of mumbled it. She said, "Well, you haven't really forgiven him if you haven't forgotten about it." And I was like, "What?" And I remember in my mind getting a little bit angry, like, am I required just to forget about all of this that just totally changed my life and sent me into a tailspin, that my father killed my mother? Am I just supposed to forget this? Like, write it off, don't talk about it, it never happened? And it sparked something in me, because I realized as the years went on, Chris, there are a lot of people that have this belief, and I don't know where it comes from, but they think, well, forgiving is forgetting. And I would tell you, that's the biggest line of crap I have ever heard. Because there, again, as I mentioned, there's some people that have some atrocious, very, very horrible things happen to them. And I will tell you, never, ever, ever am I or Chris expecting you to forget those things that have ever happened. You're not required to forget them. You are not. It's not
Yeah.
the same thing. You can forgive. You can forgive what's happened, and you are not required to forget it. And I would even add that um, remembering what happened, remembering how it happened, would make you wiser and make you smarter, carrying that, into the future. Not necessarily the pain, but in this kind of case, who you can trust, right?
Hmm.
Who signs to look for. Some of the things you mentioned, Chris, about toxic family. Um, this is as painful as it's been. This has made you wiser. It's made you a better husband. It's made you a better father, because you know what to look for. And so, no, you are not required to forget. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you are not.
Scott, I'm very grateful you shared that with me because one of the things I tell people a lot when I grief coach is the following. You can forget what people say, you really can, but you will never forget how people made you feel. And that is
Mm,
something I have caught on a lot. And I tell people,
amen.
by the way,
Yeah.
you can sit here and lie to yourself about it, but I will tell you right now, 50 years from now, and somebody brings that up, you will remember the feeling. It will be in here.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
um,
Oh,
you,
yeah.
you might forget what gets said, but you will never forget how people make you
Yeah.
feel. And that's
100%, buddy.
and and to be honest with you, man, I appreciate what you just said, by the way, because that set of family I had, my in-laws, you taught me a lot of things I don't want to be. You taught me that. And
Mm,
so something that I will share with you guys, talking about forgiveness, especially if you had a toxic family situation or a toxic job or whatever it was around you. I'm going to tell you this right now, and this one's going to sting a little bit because it upset the crap out of me when I heard it. Those people showed you everything you don't want to be. They showed you what not to do. They were actually a teacher in front of you. And for you, by the way, for you guys listening to this podcast and listening to Scott's message today, when you take that forgiveness, the way Scott's talked about it today, and you implement that in your life to whatever way you can, I will tell you right now, you will be a better person every single day. And you will always have examples from all these people that wronged you, all these people that tried to force you to forgive. They have taught you everything that you are not. And so you can walk proudly into your future, by the way, saying, I know not to treat other people this way. I know not to say things to other people this way because those people did it to me, and I don't wish it upon people I cross on my path. So I'm going to share with you when you do get to a place in forgiveness, that will come up very big. And you're not going to want retribution anymore. You're not even going to be thinking about that at all. You're going to go, you taught me things I don't want to be and do. Thank you.
yep.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm going over here. And it's going to feel from a place of empowerment, which is why I call my coaching the empowered grief journey for that reason. It's going to come from a place of empowerment. And by the way, you're going to come across people who were where were, and you're going to be able to show them how to do forgiveness as well. And that's the big gift that I will say that comes out of chaos of toxic relationships. You have a gift to go out there, by the way, and break generational curses like Scott did. Scott very well could have turned out to be an aggressive, abusive father like his father was. He could have. That's an option. but Scott broke that generational curse and he broke it hard. And this man has a beautiful family today because he broke that generational curse and because he found forgiveness. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to put that out there. Scott is a prime example of the power that forgiveness holds within us if we choose to let that in and take it fully for what it is. So, Scott, I just want to say, powerful, powerful episode, my friend. Thank you so much for coming back for a part two. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. This has been a blessing. I hope it spoke to some people and they can implement it into their life, because this is great information, but it doesn't do a whole lot if you don't implement it, right? So take what works and run with it, and I hope it helps you get unstuck and you're able to let go of some of those horrible things that have happened. So thanks again for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being on. And I want to thank our listeners today for joining Scott and I on another episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Scott's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you during your grief journey, visit empowergriefjourney.com and subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. You're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time. Brother, this was awesome. Mm. You got some. I
Dude,
just
we got we,
mm.
we got some synergy between us. This is crazy. I don't even know how many podcasts I've done. Not as many as you've done, been a guest on, but I don't know that I've ever just connected with someone. I've had a few good ones, but this might top the charts. Thank you so much, man. Pretty cool.
Dude, yeah, I'm
Pretty cool.
excited for us to keep in touch because I struggle with forgiveness a lot, man. I'm serious. The two episodes you've done,
Yeah.
electric. I mean, those are I feel like if somebody listens to your episodes, I'm not joking, they can take action on them and they can create actual change in their life. I mean, that's how powerful these are. So
I hope so. Thank you.
I'm just pumped up, man. I got the Tony Robbins energy going from you.
I love it. So, what is it you want to do? What is for your book or
Um,
something?
I'm trying to find the Zoom options here. Let's see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's see. Okay, can you see my anthology page pulled up?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, awesome. So what I've got going, I'm trying to write a book to honor my son is a big part of it. And when I started this podcast, I knew that I was on a path to do something way bigger than myself, and this is what came out of that.
Hmm.
So it's going to be 23 stories of grief that carved a new path forward. It's going to be an anthology book. So there's going to be myself and 22 other authors writing a chapter each in this book. Um, and I'm going to scroll down real quick because the story
Yeah.
format's the important part here. Um, I'm going to have you guys choose a story title that resonates with your story. Your story is going to be 5 to 7 pages long in the book. And the format that I want people to write it in is a brief introduction of the loss or grief event you experienced, what that season of grief felt like emotionally, physically, spiritually, however that fits, and then key turning points in your healing journey. And then I also want you guys to share lessons, realizations, and practices that helped move you forward. And then where you are
Hmm.
now and what grief has taught you. And also a message of hope, insight, or reflection to end out the chapter. Um, the reason I'm looking for people to do this is because and I want you to be part of the book, man, if you can. I
Yeah.
just you would be a very big piece of this book, and it would be just freaking awesome. I'm jumping like a little kid out of my chair if you do, because your story can just help so many people in this book. So
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. I have now I get now I get where you're coming from. I had I'm trying to remember, this is a little bit embarrassing, but pre-COVID, so we're going to go back about 7 years, 8 years ago. I was a contributing author to a book. Um, And this is embarrassing that I don't remember the name of it. Hang on a second. I might have it on the shelf. Um, no, I don't think it's there. It was a series. Um, and I think there was six series, and it was called Guts, Grit, and the Grind. I think is what it was called. Guts, Grit, and the Grind. You can find it on Amazon. But it had I think there was, I could be wrong, Chris, 48, 52, 54 different contributing authors. And it was basically the Guts, Grit, and the Grind. They called it a men's mechanics for overcoming trauma or overcoming life's something. Um, and it was a weird thing. I should remember more about it because I was a contributing author. But when what happened was I they had a group, and all of us were together and we were doing Zoom and stuff like that. And my job at the time really started to take on, um, it started to consume me a little bit more. And not only that, during that time, I was trying to start a business. And so I
Mm,
kind of fell out of touch with the rest of the men. But I think I'm in volume 5, volume 6, but my story's in there. So anyway, I'm just sharing with you. I've done something like this before and I love it. I think it is absolutely valuable that if you can take these different stories, these different experiences, and not only share the story, but how what did we do to overcome it? What did we do to come out on the other side a victor instead of a victim, right? So I love this. I love this idea, and I'm happy to be a contributor to it. You betcha, pal. Yeah,
awesome, man. That means a lot to me, Scott. You've got an awesome story to share,
yeah,
and that makes me happy, man. We're
yeah.
this is
No, I'm glad to do it, pal. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do is just change the way that the world sees grief because
Hmm.
a lot of people just have it backwards what grief is. And when we can find ways, your story of forgiveness is a prime example. I mean, you could still be angry at your dad. You could still have had a
Hmm.
whole different life path without forgiveness. And to see people go from grief to gratitude like that on that path is what I want to share with people because when they're in that throes of grief, it's hard to see those things. And so
Right.
creating this book is something that I wish somebody would give me something like this kind of resource when I was in the throes of my grief so that I could say, okay, it's not going to be all rain and clouds all the time. You know, we're going to go through the motions and find our way out. Um,
Yep.
so what I'll
Yeah.
share with you, it's going to be 23 stories. Each chapter's 5 to 7 pages. We're going to
Hmm.
be looking at probably a full book of around 180 to 200 pages for it. I'm going to have intros, bios, dedications, acknowledgments, and resources. I have a lot
Great.
of authors like you that are speakers and have written books before, things like that. The resource section, I want to make sure we put how to get in touch with these authors in that book because if somebody resonates with your story, I want them to be able to connect with you. Um,
Okay.
and then I'm working on creating some other projects after we get the book published, like doing webinars or mini classes or master classes with the
Mm,
authors, because I think that there's a lot of way for us to make this financially fun for us, is the way I'll use that. But I'll also say
mm.
that my big audacious goal with this is to sell 100,000 copies of this book. And that's not just to make money, but
Boom.
but I I want to go change the world, man. I don't want this to be some book that sits on the shelf and sells 100 copies. I want to go sell 100,000 copies and
I
get
love it.
get
Yeah.
people to I mean, I'm just thinking about if 100,000 people heard your message about forgiveness, what would the impact be in the world just with that
Yeah.
story by itself? I
Yeah.
mean, that
That's
that's
pretty
that's
cool.
the power.
I love
Um
that, buddy. That's awesome. I love it. I
so
love your big thinking.
yeah, so that's my goal with this. So there's a lot of other things that we'll be doing as authors together. I'm going to have a Facebook group for all of us to be in as we go through the project so we can always talk to each other and stay on track with the project as it goes forward. Um,
Okay.
I'll likely be asking for a contribution, and the reason I'm not collecting any of this stuff up front yet is because
Mhm.
I'm interviewing publishers and editors to figure out what costs are involved with this.
Sure.
Um, I'm
Sure.
keeping it somewhere between $100 and $200 a person, and I'm pitching it myself too. But I want
Yeah.
to make sure that we get a good book cover on it. I want to get the ISBN done and a copyright on the book as well, so people don't take our stuff and do things with it.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm
Yep.
also trying to figure out a good book launch for this with all of our authorship online. I'm going to try to make sure we can go across multiple social media platforms with all of our audiences, and also do podcasts with people. I want all the authors to jump on podcasts and get this book out there in the world. So it's a big undertaking, but I think all of us together, we're very empowered individuals and we're going to go do something bigger than us.
I love it, dude. That's great. Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of that. I think that there's going to be the beautiful, really, really beautiful thing about something like what you're doing is that you're going to have all of these different scenarios, and one person may look at my story and go, I've never really had to. I don't know. That's like, wow, inspiring story, but it didn't really hit them. But they may take a story like yours and go, whoa, holy crap, whoa, whoa. I mean, it just gut punches them. It speaks to them really loud. And so there's the variety in a book like this is guaranteed to reach out to the right to several people, right? It's not one person's not going to look at every story and go, oh my God, every one of these stories I can relate to. That's
Well,
probably,
that's
that's
what I
probably
put
not going to
together.
happen, but they're going to take, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I put together in this book. I've got people that have attempted suicide, lost somebody from suicide. I've had people that have lost parents. I've had people like you that had the one-off. I have a girl that got held captive in her apartment by an ex-boyfriend, like handcuffed, and I mean just like some MSNBC late night whatever Dateline story thing. Um, I've got somebody like that in this book. Your story is very unique too. Your father murdering your mother and your forgiveness, your power on that. I just have so many powerful people with just been through the depths of hell, pardon me, and they've come out on the other side doing so much good in the world. And this is why I said for a long time that my son and God, I don't know what it is, but I feel it, that they put me on a path to do something really freaking big to go change the world. And it wasn't about me. It was never going to be the Chris Mamone show. It was going to be Chris is going to go find 22 people to join him on this bandwagon. And these are people that have gone through trauma just like him, but we're going to go out there and change how the world sees it. And so I'm really fired up because I've found just awesome people like you that I love like family. And
Yeah.
we're gonna go make a big mission out of this, my friend.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, pal.
Oh,
Yeah, you
yeah.
count me into it for sure. You betcha.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I'm getting everybody lined up. I've got
Yeah.
16 people right now. I've got 6 or 7 that I need to add to this to get the full count done. But
Hmm.
I'm thinking I'll have another meeting with everybody on this, pending when I get all the people lined up, the first or second week in June, to get our initial meeting
Okay.
rolling. So, long story
Yeah.
short, stay
Yeah.
tuned because I'll definitely be in touch with you.
Yeah. Oh,
So.
that sounds great, pal. Awesome. I love it. Yeah, count me in. I support your work.